everybody, it's Romania Black. No big deal, just the season finale of season 1 of Mob Psycho. I have not taken that much time off since episode 11. I watched episodes 10 and 11 kind of back to back, like within a few days of each other, and then I took like a solid week off. But since I watched those two really close together, I'm a little bit early, but episode 10 just aired on Patreon, episode 9 on YouTube, but I'm sorry, I can't wait. It's just this series is too hard to binge, and I'm traveling a lot this month, so that's my excuse. But I don't have very many comments to tie in before we start, but I do have a major Reagan thirst update, so that might take a little while. So we'll go ahead and talk about the comments. Back in episode 9, EQ pointed out that the psychic kids like Hoshino and Ray and all of them, Daichi and all of them, could be a reference to the series Cyborg 009, which kind of was, I guess, a series that was back like in the 60s and 70s that it's kind of could be a connection to, like a reference to. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm glad they seemingly are getting out of the lair, maybe, possibly, in all of this and escaping those poor kids. And then Alex Cornejo talked about how Reagan, we were talking about Good Omens. I love Good Omens, the Neil Gaiman series. It's wonderful. But they were talking about how in Good Omens, if you've ever seen that series, it deals with angels and demons. And one of the things is that this psychic, she can't see any aura coming off of this kid who it turns out is the Antichrist. And that's why she can't sense any aura, because it's literally the devil's son. And so Alex was like, well, maybe the reason that Mob can't see any aura coming off Reagan is because he's the devil incarnate. And I was like, ah, ha, ha, ha. For episode 10, that's pretty funny. Before we realized that Reagan is not the mob boss, but is actually the only adult in this situation. And so, but he seems to be knocked unconscious. I don't think Reagan's dead. Of course not. There was no blood. And this series is not shied away from blood. We saw, like, Mob was bloodied up back in episode 9. So, and episode 10. So this series isn't shy away from blood. So the fact that we didn't see any with Reagan, I don't think is censorship. I think it's literally the fact that he was slammed down with so much force from the toy plastic sword. They made a point of saying it was a plastic sword. It knocked him down, but I don't think he's dead. I think he might be unconscious. But in either case, Mob had murderous intent, so what do we do with that? And Reagan told him not to do anything. He's like, don't hurt anyone. And so I'm like, is Mob, it's a season finale, is Mob gonna hurt these members of Claw? What is that gonna be like? Are we ever gonna see the actual leader of Claw? Probably. What does that amount to? And what do we do with this? Is Mob going to be able to maintain his humanity? Is he gonna be able to stay in control? Is Reagan going to be disappointed at him if he finds out that he didn't listen? How is this going to work? What's the resolution of this season going to be? We've got 2 more seasons, so what do we do? But I'm so curious. And then you have Sho, who is not really in this battle. Is Sho going to grab Ritsu and go and like make off? Because it seemed like he wanted to take Ritsu back with him to brainwash him. How's that going to work? So there's a lot of tension in this season finale. So what do we do with that? But we do have a Reagan thirst update to do before we start this. So going off of Halloween, I want to talk about one of my favorite artists is on Twitter. If you've not followed them, it's Emiko Chan Art. If you look at Emiko Chan Art, they do so much artwork from Skate the Infinity to Mob Psycho to mainly Skate the Infinity and Mob Psycho are the 2 series that I look at their fan art the most from. But that little dog werewolf image that I had in the last couple episodes, yeah, this was their version of it. Woof. It's great, but I thought that was good. And so the only non-Teru image that I have to show you all, I might as well just get, the only non-Reagan image I have, I might as well get out of the way, is of Teru. And that is, I thought this image of, it was shared in the Discord, of Mob and Teru as Howl's Moving Castle, freaking adorable. Howl's Moving Castle is maybe like my second favorite Ghibli film. It's so good. And Teru as Howl, chef's kiss. The only thing that makes this even more perfect, other than Dimple being Calcifer, is the fact that Mob's hair turns like a silver color. Mob with silver hair would be amazing. So he'll age into it eventually. So got that to look forward to, Teru, if you guys can hit it off. So that's the only non-Reagan thing. The rest of this thirst update is entirely Reagan, as it should be. But I saw this Reagan figurine. Amazing. Reagan as the girl in the girl's like school uniform. But speaking of Reagan being the, devil incarnate, the evil mastermind, I really liked this one that Mano shared of Reagan, this fan art of him as being evil. Back in episode 10, at the end of episode 10, I'm like, are we going to get a heel turn from Reagan? No, he turns out to be like the best con man ever, so there's that. But then there were several pieces of art on Discord, and I did the highlights, but apparently there was this pose on Twitter, and people were redrawing it with Reagan and just calling him baby girl. I'm like, what do we do with y'all? What do we do with this fandom, right? And so there was that one, which looks pretty apt. A pretty good redraw over it. Still Reagan-esque. But this one was maybe my favorite. This one here from Elif Commission, the Elify. There's just something about his face in that image. There's something about that face. It looks very one. It looks very much like the mangaka of Mob Psycho actually drew it. And I don't know what to think about it. So there's that. Also, I know I've commissioned you all to find me the Reagan cardboard cutout. I've sent you on a quest. But if anybody also knows where I can find one of these Got Salt hoodies, I'll buy the hell out of that. I need that hoodie that says Got Salt on it in pink. I need it. So I may have to go do some digging for that hoodie, because for future Mob Psycho seasoning reactions, I may need that hoodie. So I'm going to be on the lookout for that. That may need to happen. But finally, this is a minute character spoiler for Chainsaw Man. If you don't want a minor character spoiler for Chainsaw Man, you need to skip about 30 seconds until this next image is gone. Okay, just like scroll through till the image is gone. But I've been watching Chainsaw Man as well as this series, and there was this fan art of Reagan, and it's the meme where it's like, oh, party rockers in the house, and then there's the person that corrects them and says, no, it's party rock is in the house, and then they look at each other, and then so the crack crossover pairings never cease with Reagan. We've had the Witch Hat Leotair. We've had him with oh god, San from Undertale. And now, for your next crossover crack pairing agenda, we have Aki from Chainsaw Man, where Reagan's like, oh, party rockers in the house. He's like, it's party rock. And then they both look at each other. And then they just start making out. And it's like, oh my god! The Reagan thirst cannot be stopped. And now that's into season 1, I have a feeling it's only going to go downhill from here. It's only going to get worse. So I'm really excited to see what's all going to happen in this season finale. It's only season 1, so I'm not sad. We still got 2 more seasons to go. But what we going to do? So in any case, I'm excited to start Mob Psycho and see what happens in the season finale. I'm worried for Mob. I'm worried for Reagan. I'm worried for Dimple. He's still in the jar. I'm worried for Ritsu. I'm worried for everybody. So let's just see how this is handled. And it's going to be the last time we hear the first OP, which is sad days. So we'll have to savor it while we can. But we are going to start Mob Psycho 100 season finales, episode 12. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this. Oh my gosh. So this season finale, what? It was so wholesome and good and badass and wrapped everything up. And it literally, you know what it did? You know what it did? It was the moment Reagan took all of that tension and stuff away from Mob. It was like Reagan took, for us, the audience, all of that tension and stress and just lifted it off of our shoulders. Like he did a rock salt Himalayan massage to all of us. And then was like, no, this is how it's going to go. So fascinated by this season finale and what it's leading us to for the second season. It did not go in any remote way, shape, or form how I thought it was going to go. And I've got to look up now what in the world a Tsuchinoko is, because it looks like a little snake thing. Okay, we're going to look up that. What in the heck? Okay, we'll go back to it when we get to that little end credit scene. It was like a little extra. It was like a little extra with Mob, but Reagan Arataka! He is the trash king best boy and the best man. Best man. He is an adult, darn it. This episode did not go at all the way that I thought it was going to go. it didn't go at all the way I was thinking it was going to go. So I guess what we need to do here is put expectation versus reality on here. Because Reagan Arataka gave these psychics a big old dose of reality and all that came with it, right? Oh my God. So the expectation in all of this is that Mob was going to fight and maybe kill the members of Claw. That was the expectation. Going into this episode, I was thinking that Mob was gonna explode, especially with Reagan, like, getting slashed like that. But then Mob, the thing of it is, he says, don't do it, Mob. And saying when things go south, it's okay to run away. And telling him it's fine. And so the thing of it is, the fact of the matter is that the expectation was that did Reagan get psychic powers? Well, we'll talk about that, kind of. But the fact of the matter is that Mob, instead of Mob going 100% or 1,000% or doing all that, he channeled all of that power. Mob's power went to Reagan, who didn't quite realize it at first. But the crazy thing about that is the power went to Reagan. The crazy thing is that when Mob reaches like 1,000%, he becomes this unhinged monster of this unknown energy. But because Reagan is, and he's like a teenage kid who doesn't know how to channel any of this emotion, all that, so it just like festers and manifests into this monster. But Reagan, because he's an adult, is just like, yeah, no, stop. And is able to channel it. It's like, if Mob ever gave this power to Reagan for real, like more than once, it'd be actually kind of dangerous. But yeah, and so I love it. There's so many lines in this episode that kind of read as like cheesy lines, but they're intentionally cheesy. I feel like the mangaka is in on the joke and understands what they're saying and is like parodying it almost, right? Because Terror's like, damn it, I can't believe this is happening. Like, we're doomed, right? And then Mob's like, oh my God, Reagan. And Ritsu's like, Ritsu's just like, shit, I have a bad feeling about this. This is not good. There's a lot of stress that's going to hit Nissan. And then something's about to happen. And that's when we get the intro. And then we cut to the water and everything. And Mob says, honestly, I don't want to hurt anybody. He's like, I don't want to fight you all. But if I don't fight you, we're going to be killed. That's the feeling that I got. He's like, I thought that I was doing it to protect everyone. And so the eye that was in the OP that was above the city is actually from the building. It's the moon up there in the building and everything around it. That's what it was. Okay, that makes sense. He's like, but this is the situation we're in right now. And Ritsu's like, what are we going to do? And he's like, but yet, my master told me that to run away means not to fight, and it's okay to run away. So I'm gonna leave it to the master. So Mob doesn't fight. Instead of fighting and killing Claw, he lets the adult handle it. Which is fine, because like Reagan told him in the last episode, he's like, no, he's like, if you fight, you're just going to be ending up being the one that suffers because you clearly don't want to do this. You feel like you're being forced to do it. He's like, it's okay to say no. It's okay to back away. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of people watching this episode that's going to be like, oh, that was so lame. Mob didn't fight. He didn't like go all out and kill them all. And it's like, no, that's the point. The point is that, no, grow up. That's what Reagan's trying to tell him. He's like, we don't have to do this. He's like, children fight to the death. He's like, adults should not have to do that. We should be better than that. Which is amazing because it's Reagan saying it. But it's also like the mangaka being like, oh, you expected this epic final battle with this shonen? And we're only in season 1, y'all. We got 2 more seasons. We ain't going to have this epic battle in season 1. No. So I feel like the mangaka is saying, no, this is not going to be like your mama shonen where these characters duke it out to the death pointlessly. He's like, no, Reagan is actually going to say, let's deal with this like adults. You don't have to fight to the death. That's dumb. I'm so here for it. And then Reagan being like, and everybody's like, wait, what? How is Reagan alive? And he's like, impossible. I love this. It's Hosoya voicing Sakurai, because hearing Reiner's voice come out of this body is amazing. And he's like, don't scare me like that. It's like, I thought you actually cut me for a second. And Ritsu's like, how is this even possible? And he's like, the katana was a fake. And he's like, it totally felt plastic. And he's like, oh, so what kind of trick are you using to cut the floor earlier? Here's the thing, Reagan is like, doesn't realize, he figures it out. Like 3/4 of the way through, he figures out that mobs gave him his power. But at the start here, he thinks that they're all tricks. So Reagan, there's this moment where we have all the claw members with their powers, and Reagan gives them realistic explanations, right? He tries to explain it through reality rather than acknowledging that they're espers. So when he's like, oh, you got a plastic toy, he's like, what was the trick you did to cut the floor? How'd you do that? And it's just, oh my God. And Tara's like, what is happening? He's acting normally. He's like, I'm going to chop off your head. But here's the thing, because he has mob's power, he's like, oh, ow. He's like, listen, real adults don't have time to play with toy swords. He just breaks it. The thing about it is, at this point in the episode, I seriously was contemplating. I was really contemplating, because at this point we don't know that Mob's given his power to Reagan. He's transferred, when Reagan did the idiot sandwich, he transferred his power to him. So at this point in the episode, I was seriously wondering, like, Tara's all on board. He's like, well, that's Kageyama's master, huh? How about that? And so then the one comes up with the monster, and he's like, oh, he's like, an evil spirit. He's like, Mob, do something. And he actually sees it. Reagan can actually see the spirits. And then it hits Reagan, and he's like, oh, well, that just felt like a punch. That's weird. He's like, are you a plushie? And I love just, like, the look on Matsuma's face. He's like, are you some kind of mascot? I honestly, if I have two phobias in this world, I don't like needles. I am terrified of needles. Nope. And I don't like mascots. I want to go to Japan and see all the Japanese mascots, but I want to stay a solid 50 feet from them. Not be close. I just don't like the idea of somebody in a costume. Like, which you would think when you go to cosplay and conventions, you're like, well, those are everywhere. Those are not mascots. Mascots are like at a college or something, or like in a suit. No. At cosplay, I don't feel creepy around those, but mascots? Clowns? No. So whenever Reagan did that, I was like, I totally relate, feel that. But he exercises the ghost and pushes Matsuo back. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rip your costume. And Ritsu was like, is Reagan actually a psychic? And at this point, whenever Tara's like, oh, he's surrounded, hold on. And then the animators, they just like went all out making Reagan look as flawless as possible. Like, what in the world? Like, just why? Why? And just like an orchestrator, like, just makes them part ways. Are you joking? Oh my God. And just the animation of him like just sauntering away. I was like, the studio was like, yes, Reagan Arataka. And then Teru like leaps down like, what is this? He's like, is this some new form of 3D imagery or something? Okay, like I was saying before I was distracted by Reagan, at this point in the episode, I was seriously contemplating if the reality of the situation was, I'm like, has this all been in the kids' heads the entire time? Has this all... Because at this point in the episode, until you find out that Reagan actually took Mob's powers, there's a part of you that's like, well, Reagan's really the only adult in this world so far, other than the parents. And the parents don't seem to think it's a big deal about the spoons bending. And the one guy with the plaid suit on doesn't seem to like know any crazy psychic real Esper powers. So part of me at this point was wondering, has this all been like in Mob and the other kids' heads the whole time? Has it been just pretend? And they're all just frauds. They're not really Espers. And Reagan's just pointing out the reality of the situation. And we, the audience, have been led on this adventure thinking that Mob and them have these psychic powers that don't exist. Not in reality. It's all just been like make-believe this whole time. I was honestly contemplating that, being like, oh my God, has the toy sword, the 3D imagery, the balls, has that all been a trick? And Reagan's pointing out the realism here. I was seriously having like an existential crises in the middle of this episode, being like, have I been wrong this whole time? Like, just, it's amazing. But the reality is, he got the power from Mob. Someone this skilled still exists in this world. The scary thing is that Reagan has all the power that Mob had. The scary thing is, if Mob was an adult that had the confidence and assurity that Reagan has, Mob would be pretty unstoppable. Like, pretty unstoppable. Which is the scary thing, right? And so they're like, well, we have to take care of him. I'm very surprised that Ishiguro was an old man. I thought Ishiguro was going to be a little kid. But no, they were an old man posing that they were younger. They're like, we can't let him get in the way of world domination. And so I like these, like, oh, you're using some kind of magic tricks, huh? Really? You're a bunch of frauds. And he's like, let's just try that black orb thing again. Oh my God. And then, yeah, it's just great. And they're like, how is Reagan standing up to this? He's like, leave this to the adult. He's like, my body's in great shape today. I love that Reagan doesn't realize until later that he's taking Mob's powers. He's just like, man, didn't work out for a good solid 2 days, but I'm feeling really good. And Mob's like, Master is amazing. And when he says it's okay to run away, as soon as he heard those words, the explosive amount of energy building within Mob changed its direction. So the thing about it is that Mob, all of his power, instead of welling up inside of him and exploding, instead it all went outward and went to Reagan. So when Reagan touched him, it all transferred to him in that moment. And it didn't build up anymore. There are times when the power of one's words is unfathomable. And so those with power must fight. The responsibility had made Mob's bridge collapse. So yeah, so the idea that power equaling responsibility, and that was leading to Mob feeling this sense of despair, because he's like, I don't want to be responsible of hurting people. He's like, I want to be responsible in saving people, but he's like, what? I don't want to deal with what comes with that. And it says, however, one's heart can find a resolution by being offered a helping hand. But the solution to that responsibility is to receive help. That's the thing about it, is that in this moment, like in the last episode, Ritsu and Teru were like, Mob, only you can do this. Mob, it's up to you. And they were pushing all the responsibility on this one person rather than shouldering the burden. And Reagan came in and was like, no, you don't have to do this alone. We'll escape together and run away together. So that responsibility didn't have to be Mob's all by himself anymore. And so it kind of like gave him a way to, he's like, as a result, Mob's energy was temporarily tossed over to Reagan. Like, I love that shot of, like, the cut across his back and everything. It's great. In essence, he had successfully ran away and was rather refreshed now. All that was left in his heart was gratitude towards his master. So, in that moment, he was able to run away, and he had the gratitude. So in that moment, instead of 100% murderous intent, it was 100% gratitude. And then they said that it amplifies. It goes through the rainbow, right? And says, Reagan Arataka, 1,000%, 0% Mob. So yeah, so it becomes, that transforms into 0% Mob and 1,000% Reagan Arataka. Ooh, yep, okay. And then, I'm sorry, but Reagan just batting them out, batting away the spells and everything and the balls. He's like, are these soap bubbles? Oh my God, I just love it. The animators, they just went all out. They just said, you know what? We're just gonna make Reagan look the most amazing. Which is hilarious, because in the extra of him and Mob, it looks like the manga. They look so simple there. But here, the animators were like, no, we're going all out. With his bare hands. What happened to the man that was running away just a moment ago? Yep. And so then, yeah, the old man decides to put his body on the line. And he does all, like, the super moves, like the 5,000 kilogram punch, the 2 million ton guillotine. I'm sorry, the 2 ton guillotine. The moment where Reagan's, like, falling back out of the sky, he does this, like, pose. It's like the animators, even when he's falling out of the sky, they couldn't help but make him look slightly sexy in that moment either. The thirst of these animators. The thirst. But honestly, at this point, as Reagan's being thrown up into the air and body slammed into the ground from hundreds of feet away, I was thinking, okay, one, this is, the realistic explanations is off now, right? But two, I'm like, how does Reagan not know that he's not normal anymore, that something's up, something's happened? I thought for a second too that maybe these spiritual powers awakened in Reagan, and maybe they have. That's the thing. He says he doesn't have any spiritual powers or any psychic powers. He can only see Dimple. But I'm like, is that true? Or does Reagan not realize it yet? Does Reagan not realize that he has psychic powers? That's the question, right? But then Reagan getting slammed back to the ground. Reagan's like, what the hell is happening? He's like, are you still conscious? And Reagan's like, get off of me. He's like, get off of me. Stop talking while you're on top of me. He's like, I don't like it, old man. And he's like, what a dense energy barrier. And yeah, that was why his black orbs weren't being affected. And then, oh my gosh, he just tosses him aside and he takes the mask off of him. And then he says, actually, what is with this strength? Like, how'd I just throw him up against the wall? He's like, what's going on? And then he's like, could it be him? He's like, that's the only plausible explanation. So I'm glad that Reagan realizes it. I'm glad that Reagan's smart enough to realize that, oh yeah, I did take psychic powers from Mob. That is exactly what has happened in this moment. Okay. He's like, that's the only plausible explanation. And then Asoya's voice, Sakurai is still trying to get to him. And he says, someone your age needs to quit messing around. Reagan is telling all of these, y'all need to grow up. So yeah, Reagan tells Claw to grow up. Oh my God, this scene with Sakurai, because the thing about it is that he's like, you need to quit messing around. And Sakurai is so insulted. And he's like, how could you even know my story? He's like, to hell with society. He has this big, dramatic, villainous monologue where he's like, you've only seen its good side. I was like, and then it is the most stereotypical backstory for a villain, right? He says, as soon as I was born, I was abandoned by my parents. I was all alone. One happy family, mother's cooking. I got to experience none of that as a boy. And it shows him he's got the little glasses and he looks all hunched up. And one pant leg is completely ripped off like a shark took it. It's the most cliche. And then he's just like, I was terribly bullied at an orphanage and I cursed the world. And then it shows him becoming, if I hadn't, I wouldn't have survived. And it shows him becoming the curse signal. The symbol of the curse, like what he put in the room where their spiritual powers wouldn't work. And it's funny because the curse, the kanji for it and everything, looks like a pair of glasses, which he's wearing. And then he says, and then I awakened to my powers and I was able to survive because of those powers. So the crazy thing about it is that despite it being super cliche, despite all of that, the funny thing is that it's actually a very tragic story. And he's like, I survived because of my powers. But the thing of it is, like Reagan said, there was no adults around him to help him grow up. He was just, he's a perpetual child. He's using toys. He uses an air gun and a plastic sword as a weapon. He's a child, just like an adult version of that, or a pseudo-adult. And then he's like, anybody that, and then he says, what's with that look? And he's like, don't look at me like that. And Reagan is just like, it's the Squidward look. It's the Teru face from episode 5. It's that same expression. And Reagan goes, I totally understand how you feel. And he's like, he's the same as me. And at this point, I was like, are we going to get a tragic backstory with Reagan? Are we really? And then the moment he has the downcast eyes and he says, I was in grade school. Maybe it was around the 4th grade. I was like, oh my God, where are we going with this? And then at this point, he says, and it shows him, he says, I forgot to tell my parents that it was sports day at school that day. And we see a little tiny Reagan. He has the little red headband. All the other parents are eating with their kids. He's like, I forgot to tell them that. And then I was the only one with nothing to eat. And Sakurai's like, that's your fault. What are you even talking about? He's like, this is not the same story at all. He's like, your parents were there. You weren't alone. You just forgot to talk to them. That's not my fault. And Reagan goes, well, it was a story about when I felt lonely as a boy. He's like, that's what this is about, right? And Soya's like, don't compare that stupid story to mine. Which is, to be fair, Sakurai, Soya's VA, Sakurai's story sounds like it is much more tragic than Reagan's. Reagan's does not sound nearly that tragic. He just took a random experience and compared it. But I also like that baby Reagan was like a little beefy, stocky kid. And then he says Jugon airgun. Like, she had Jugon sword and now it's Jugon airgun. Interesting. The ultimate weapon of destruction. And then Reagan's like, no, get out of here. And then he's like, let me just like throws the gun down. He's like, fine, I'll spray you with this cologne, my cursed cologne. And he's like, I don't get it, but don't point that at others. And then he uses he says, I'll take that. And then the other guy, the guy that made copies, he's like, you're still doing that crap? He's like, you use the psychic powers you've been blessed with for the stupidest things. Yeah, Reagan's just like, you have these psychic powers you've been blessed with. Like, he basically gives them the same speech he gives Mob. He's like, you guys have been blessed with these powers, and you're using them for dumb stuff. He's like, what are you doing? And he says, you're like a little kid with a knife. I can't bear to watch. And then Ellery does the Reagan attack of the hand thing. He's like, what's that thing on your forehead? And then the guy's like sweating. He's like, oh, well, that. And he's like, what are these shoulder pads? He's like, what's the point of these? Well, what do they do? And he's like, well, they guard my shoulders. Right? And he says, that means they're just accessories. They don't have a purpose. And Ritsu's like, what is happening? He's like, well, no. And he says, don't get the wrong idea. No matter what kind of special powers they may be blessed with, people are only human. Nothing more, nothing less. You guys haven't realized that yet. You're addicted to your special powers that you've developed tunnel vision. You're plotting world domination when you haven't even seen the world. As Matsuo's holding the jar with all the stickers across it. So yeah, Reagan's like, he's like, you have these special powers. And instead, without knowing what to do with them, he's like, you want to control a world that you reject and know nothing about. Because Reagan, for being a con man, he's pretty worldly. He knows how the world works. And he's an adult of adults. And so he's like, you guys want to control the world? He's like, you don't even know the world. He's like, you've never been out in it. You guys are all shut-ins. You have no clue what the world is like. And everybody's like, don't make me laugh. And I love that Ritsu and Teru and them are like, he's like, no one's going to follow you like that. Get rid of these childish shoulder pads and grow up. He's like, you too. You want to escape from society. If you want to make it big, you have to live in reality. He's like, you can't just escape. You got to be in the midst of it. That's where you start. And then they say, you tell us to return to being commoners. And I love that the animation of Reagan gets like so crazy. So I'm really curious to see this in the manga, what it looks like. It's probably just like him and a doodle. And that's it. But he's like, don't look at this lightly. He's like, you don't get it, do you? Who the hell do you think you are? You're nothing more than a commoner. You're just part of the masses. And then he's like, but Claw is a noble organization. And then I love that Reagan has the noodly arms. He says, I'm a commoner. I'm much more powerful than you, and I'm still just a commoner. So what does that make you? Like, why is Reagan so animated? It's insanity. And he makes them drop to their knees by force. And Ritsu's like, he dragged them. Now, this part is interesting because Ritsu still doesn't like Reagan. I'm convinced that Teru is on board. Teru's like, I see why he's your master now. I get it. But Ritsu's like, wait, what? Ritsu's like, he dragged them out of their delusions and back to reality by force, by shattering their dreams. And Ritsu's kind of like, so he's basically saying that Reagan used words to shatter their dreams. and to shatter their spirits. So I think Ritsu realizes that Reagan's real power is not in the power that he stole from Mob. I mean, that helps protect him, right? But Reagan's real power is the words that he uses and how he can tear someone apart with them. And Ritsu's like, I don't know how I feel about this. This seems rather suspicious. So yeah, and then meanwhile, Teru's like, your master is amazing. And Ritsu saw through it, and Mob's like, yes, he is. And then, Ishiguro, he gives this big giant monologue about society and everything, and Reagan's like, he's like, yeah, you can keep talking all you want, but society has no interest in you. They don't care. And then I love just like all of the animation on Ishiguro. It's like, it goes so hard. And then Reagan's like, quit relying on those around you, old man, which is hilarious because he's using Mob's powers. It's just kind of funny. You're making me sad. And so then Ishiguro's like, I was born with these powers. Why can't I show them off? Kind of like a terror mentality, right? What's wrong with changing the world? And he's like, you're no different than monkeys. And he just like smacks his face. He's like, I'm so special. And so that's when he kind of like gets delusional here, right? Because he goes from, and he has all the scars all over his face. Like he's been torn up by the boss so many times. Mm-hmm. And so then he shows that mentality, right? So we kind of see with Ishiguro the manifestation and the end result of what Teru's mentality would have been like. Because before Mob got to Teru and convinced him that, you're not special because of psychic powers and you're not popular either, Mob's case in point of that, if Teru had continued on the path he was on, he would have ended up like Ishiguro, where Ishiguro's like, I'm so amazing. Why don't you just acknowledge how amazing I am? And the light shining on him, he's like, the world should put me on a pedestal and worship me. That's what Teru thought, like back in episode 4. That's how he thought. And for a little while, Ritsu was kind of getting a taste of that too. He's like, that is the only world that's worthy. And then Mob says, no, psychic powers does not make you popular at all. People don't like you. And Reagan's like, and there's all there is to it. He's like, Mob is case in point. It's like, no. He's like, you'll never be popular. Give it up. He's like, you're not popular because of psychic powers and they don't make you popular. And then Ishiguro just can't take it. And he just starts to form this black circle, this black hole. And I like that at this point, Reagan's like, well, crap, I'm out of gas. He's like, all that power's gone now. He's like, hey, Mob, how about you lend me your powers again? And Mob's like, I'm at 0% too. And they're like all going to be swallowed by this black hole, right? And then, honestly, Ishiguro looks kind of scary when he does the whole disappearing thing. He looks quite freaky, right? But then Sho says, you just don't know when to give up. Okay, fueling my ship is the one who reacts to Sho showing up as Ritsu, being like, I am a Ritsu Sho shipper already. Sign me up, put my ship's ahoy hat on, and let me sail with them. I'm ready to go. And he's like, damn it. And then he like does all this crazy animation. And then, but Sho, he tells him to disappear and shows like a massive gravity. But he's like, imagine the gravity going backwards. Like, he has the power, and his bubble is kind of similar to Teru's in color, right? You have Mob and Ritsu's look a little bit similar, and Teru and Sho's look a little similar, which, Teru Mob, Ritsu Sho, however you want to do that. But yeah, and he sends it back. So apparently, like, his imagination lets him, like, manipulate things. And he says it's not an actual black hole. It's just made from psychic powers, and he can manipulate it. I can find a way to deal with it. And he makes him, like, get down on the ground. Old man. He says, you're no longer needed. And it's like, what is this? What is him just breaking down, like breakdancing? What is this? And he's like, and as for you, and he points at Mob and says, I'm disappointed in you. You're a coward. And Mob's like, me? Why? So he says he's going to dissolve the 7th Division. I was to expect the place and take anyone who seemed useful back to HQ, but there's no one useful here. And they're like, weren't you a trainee? No, he's the boss's son. So he's like, there wasn't anyone worth my time. And he says, at least on the inside. And then he looks right over to Ritsu, and Ritsu's like, what did I do? So, I am so on the show Ritsu bandwagon. He wants to take Ritsu back to HQ. I'm convinced of it. He wants to take Ritsu. I'm like, yes. Sho and Ritsu, I'm here for the ship. I am already setting sail. But yeah, he's like, nobody was good enough to go back to the HQ within Claw, so I'm dissolving it. And he thinks that Mob's a coward, but whatever. And then he just manages to, like, teleports himself. Okay. And then Dimple gets let out and Judo chops him. It's great. And then Mob can see Dimple. He's like, what the hell is that? And he's like, oh, Dimple. He's like, I was finally able to get out. He's like, now I've regained some of my strength. I'm ready to help. And they're like, well, we kind of just took care of everything. And like Terry's over on the side like, it's fine. It's great. It's already done. And he's like, you mean the climax happened without me? I kind of feel bad for I'm glad Dimple's fine, but I kind of feel bad that he showed up ready to help. And they're like, no, this actually resolved a lot better than we thought it would. And then, yeah, I like that Reagan's like, is that an evil spirit? He's like, oh, he's like, you can see me when I'm not in my visible mode. And then they're like, and then the line where the guy that makes copies is like, they were strong. And Sakurai says, no, we were weak. God, it's good. It's so cheesy. I love it. I've come to a realization that these guys might be able to stop it. Oh my God, stop Claw from world domination. It's like, oh my God, I want to get a picture of the four of them like that because honestly, there's just something so artistic about it. You have Ritsu watching Reagan like slowly lean to Dimple. Mob's looking, and Teru is like looking at Mob like he's the most precious thing. Oh my God. Like, Teru is so looking at Mob. He ain't looking at Dimple-sama. It's great. Oh my God. I can't. And so then things go back to being normal. Mob's parents don't question where they've been all this time. Whatevs. Mob gets up, goes back to his daily routine. Although him and his brother are on good terms now. So him and his brother are like going to school together, chit-chatting it up. The plane goes by. It's great. And then Mob gets to school. And again, I love the continuity that Mob, all the other girls, they look like vegetables except for Tsubomi-chan. Tsubomi is the only one that looks cute to him. And she's just glowing and sparkling. And he says that she looks as cute as ever today. And then he like looks at her and she notices. And then Mezuko, he's like, oh no, he's like, Misato. And he's like, oh, you're panicking too much. Staring at girls is well and good, but today's the day you're going to talk to me, Mob-kun. And I'm glad that Mob sticks up to himself and is like, no, I can't talk to you today. Nope, I gotta go to club, and then I gotta go to work. Sorry, I can't do it. And she's like, I'm going to get that story out of you. And he's like, nope. I love it. She's like, why don't you tell me everything? And so Misato, so it's not that Mob is shy around all girls. He can talk to Misato of and he can talk to the president of the Psychic Club fine. It's just Tsubomi that he has the crush on is the one he can. But she actually looked at him. All right, progress. She actually noticed Mob. So there's that. That's good. And so then the president, who I honestly didn't recognize at first. Like, I don't know if he cut his hair from previous episodes. I feel like he's cut his hair, but he looked different. But he says that Mob came and visited him and said, you must have been through a lot too. We both went a little crazy. And he's been sent to go apologize to Onigawara. And then he's like, the student body's going to hate you for everything you've done. And he said, that's my own fault for doing something so stupid. And now my brother's on my side. So his brother's actually on his side. And he says, I'll keep in line. So it's interesting. And it's kind of like very cinematic. The way that Ritsu like looks down at him. It looks very cinematic. It's a really interesting angle and shot in that one moment. And he's thinking like, okay, our brothers have got our backs now. So things are different. Also, Onigawara is like a full-fledged member of the fitness club now. The body improvement club. And Goda is like calling him to join and run them. I freaking love it. It's just like everybody gets a happy ending at the end of season 1, right? Everybody's got a happy ending. Onigawara, he's with the body improvement club. Tsubomi-chan saw Mob. Mob's with his brother. It's all great. Ritsu gets to apologize and make amends along with the president. Reagan and Dimple are now the most dynamic duo, and I'm kind of all for it. I'm kind of here for it. But yeah, Onigawara, he's like, you two aren't really to blame at the end of the day. He's like, the people didn't care whether I was the culprit or not when you set me up. They were just looking for an excuse to beat me. They were chomping at the bit to find a stick to beat me with. That's the problem. The problem isn't you two. It's the fact that everybody else was not only complicit with it, but were looking for a fight with me because they were judging me from the start. That's the problem. And it's like, And so he's like, I realized that I was hated by everybody around me and how weak my heart was. And so he kind of points to Ritsu and he's like, hey, he's like, your brother was worried about you. He thought I was going to kick your ass since I was so pissed off. But I'll let things slide since you're Shadow Leader's younger brother. And they're like, what? And I love that Goda's over there being a goat, being like, what's wrong, Onigawara? You run out of energy? And it's like, OTP? Maybe Goda and Onigawara, are they an OTP? They might be. I can't picture either of them with anybody else. So maybe. And he's like, who do you think you're talking to? Oh, he's like, I'm going to keep growing just like White Tea Poison. I love that Mom still has the nickname White Tea Poison. Amazing. And they're like, body transformation, fight on. And then like from the distance, still running to catch up, is Mob. And he's still trying the most he can. And I love these, like, he looks like he's about to pass out. And Ritz is like, nah, he's stronger than everybody else here. It was just such like a cute, cheesy line. And then they look back and he's passed out. He's lost a shoe. Oh, Mob. Bless his heart. So meanwhile, the telepathy club, the president, she's kind of like, she's like, oh, well, we haven't actually started looking for any psychics. It's a goose chase, so she's trying to get actual leads. So she's still on the quest to find espers, which is curious when she has like 3 right in front of her. And then we find out that Teru is going to be leading the little group of kids, the psychic kids, and teaching them self-defense. Ray, honey, I love you, Ray, girl. I hear you, Teru. I hear you having a crush on Teru. It's warranted, but honey, you ain't got a chance. You're a chromosome off on that one. Mm-hmm. And so Hanazawa-kun is the one that's going to teach them. And I like that Teru's like, I'm going to teach you self-defense. He's like, you guys want to get stronger with me. He's like, because the point is, Claw is probably going to come after us. Since one of their divisions was crushed, they're going to make a move soon. It'll be for self-defense, so you can fight back when that happens. He's like, you guys have got to be able to defend yourselves. And I'm like, okay, that's fair enough. Fair enough, Teru. All right. And then we cut to Reagan Arataka after all that, where he's like, what brings you here? And I love the eyebrow. He's like, what you doing here, spirit? That Reagan can see now. He's like, Shigeo asked me to come. He passed out from anemia and can't help with exercising spirits. So he passed out from working out, and he's like, he sent Dimple to go deal with them. He's like, do you even need Mob anymore? And he's like, you're awakened to psychic powers too, aren't you? And then I like the Reagan's like, don't be stupid. Those were all mobs. The most he seems to have gotten was the ability to see Dimple. Nothing's changed. And I love this moment where Dimple's like, so you're just a plain old con artist again, huh? And he's like, you're a rather rude spirit. Is this the beginning of a beautiful friendship? I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of all about it. I'm kind of in love with it. I'm not going to lie. I'm really in love with it. And he says, so you're going to help me out. Dimple, was it? He's like, why do I have to help you? And he's like, well, that's why you came over, right? Why else would you have come? If he was just calling out, it would have been a phone call. So yeah, Dimple gets put to work. And he's like, aren't you Mob's errand boy? And he's like, I'm a high-level spirit. It's like, mm-hmm. And then we come back. Again, the parents. So I like this that not only... This part is really good because on the one hand, Mob thinks about what Sho told him where he's like, I'm disappointed in you, you coward. And Mob's like, did I do something lame? Like, Mob doesn't even realize what the deal is. He's like, why would he call me a coward? He's like, am I lame? Did I do something wrong? And he thinks about it. And he's like, did I make a mistake? And then not only does the spoon drop, but it spins. So it was clearly Ritsu this whole time, right? It was clearly Ritsu bending the spoon. And the mom's like, can't you fix that habit? The dad's like, oh, let him bend the spoons. He's just at that age. Let him bend spoons all he wants. These parents are surprising, like totally chill with psychic powers. I'm kind of amazed, right? Like, let him bend all the spoons he wants. And she's like, you always say that. And Ritsu's like, let me fix it. And then, yep. And then like the mom's like, what's with these kids? Right? Oh my God. It's kind of hilarious that she's just all like, what's the deal? And he gives it back. And Mob says, thanks. And then him looking over and seeing his brother and them happy. And he's like, well, whatever. At the end of the day, I love that. I love that Sho gives him such a hard time and calls him a coward for running away. But Mob's like, so what that I did that? He's like, I'm with my brother. I'm happy. They're safe. So what if I wasn't a hero? So what if I didn't stop the bad guys? He's like, my family's safe and I'm happy. So who cares what you think? I'm like, growth, Mob. From Mob going to caring so much what other people thought to the end of this season being like, as long as my brother and I are happy, screw all y'all. I love it. I love it. And then speaking of family, we cut to Sho picking up the phone. He's like, oh, I dropped my phone. And coming back to get it. And picking up and saying, oh, the 7th division was crushed. And we see that the boards and everything, he puts it together to make the claw. And the symbol is of the triangle with the claw and then the eyes, one on the inside, one on the outside of the pyramid. Espers from outside infiltrated and slaughtered the upper echelon. Which is true, to an extent. And he's like, as for all the underlings, the enemy totally won them over. So then we see the leader of Claw, which is surprisingly a much more normal-looking man that's clean cut. I didn't expect that. I expected him to be much more eccentric or... I mean, he looks menacing, but like he also looks very normal, which is weird. He's like, Sho, what are you talking about? I'm asking you for a status report on the inspection. And he's like, well, the organization you're so proud of isn't the best in the world at all. Like Sho came there to show it up and prove that it's just a joke. Interesting. So they said Sho was one of the ones that was awakened, so he's like, quit messing around, come back to Japan already, you stupid father. So we don't know where he is at, right? He says, making me do an annoying inspection. But at least I got it off my chest. And then he says, yes, very soon. So he has blue eyes too. And it looks like San Francisco. What? Like he's in America? What? So there's that. So we're setting up for season 2. Season 2, we are setting up for the fact that, one, Sho is the boss's son, the boss of Claw's kid. That explains a lot. That explains why he like could just mope around, do whatever he wanted to, but also like his powers and everything. That they're planning something. 7th division's over. What we doing? So there's all that. That's exciting. And then that Mob and everybody's seemingly in a good place. Teru's like preparing for an attack by Claw, but Mob and Ritsu are just being brothers, having a good time. Dimple and Reagan are all our best buds. But okay, so multiple Tsuchinoko sightings. Tsuchinoko. Now, granted, I like that it's news Mob, of course. I like the fact that... So Dimple wasn't with them in this episode, which means he's probably out with Ritsu or something. So I wanted to look up what a Tsuchinoko is. In Japanese folklore, the Tsuchinoko, literally translating to child of hammer, is a snake-like being. It's prevalent in Western Japan, including Kansai and Shikoku. It's known as Bachihebi in northeastern Japan. It's described as being 30 to 80 centimeters in length, similar to the appearance of a snake, but with a central girth that's much wider than its head or tail, and having fangs and venom similar to a viper. Some accounts also describe the Tsuchinoko as being able to jump up to 3 feet in distance, followed immediately by a second jump in the air. According to legend, Tsuchinoko have the ability to speak and propensity of lying, and they're also said to have a taste for alcohol. legend records that it will sometimes swallow its own tail so it can roll like a wheel, similar to a hoop snake of American legend. So it's basically a folklore animal, kind of like a snipe, kind of like Nessie or Bigfoot. That's what he likens it to. Okay, so they think that these Tsuchinoko exist, and what I love about this is, one, the animation looks like straight up out of the manga. Like this was a bonus chapter at the end of where season 1 ends, so we just get that animated, and they kept it looking the most like the manga possible. It's kind of adorable. But the other thing is that Reagan takes this opportunity to not look for the Tsuchinoko, not look for spirits or anything, but instead he basically goes and hunts like mushrooms. He basically goes for a truffle finding. Like, I imagine Reagan having a pet pig now. Maybe he'll use Dimple like a pig to hunt out truffles. That's what I imagine, right? Because we have like the big thing to hunt down in our area is, like there's a certain type of mushroom. Oh my gosh. And they're kind of like truffles and you got to go find them. And a lot of people have like pigs that help them locate them. And gosh, now I can't remember the name of them. But they basically hunt these mushrooms and they're really hard to find and they're worth a lot of money. Where are they? What is it? What kind of mushroom is it? Oh, I'm trying to think of what mushrooms you can... It's not the type of mushrooms that you can actually cook. They're the ones that are really, really popular. Let me see. There's button mushrooms, cremini, portobello. There's shiitake, oyster mushrooms, porcini. What am I looking for? Morels! That's what I'm thinking of. I was like, there's a lot of people where I live that hunt for morel mushrooms, and they're pretty rare, and they're actually worth some decent money. And apparently, if you fry them and stuff, they're really good to eat. So morels. Everybody goes morel mushroom hunting, and everybody's all secretive. They don't tell where they found the morel mushrooms. They like keep it all hush-hush. And Reagan finds the mother lode of these mushrooms to take back and cook, and he like just stuffs his basket and everything with them. He's like, let's go. I'll cook you some. He's like, what about the Tsuchinoko? He's like, those things don't even exist. And he actually like stepped on one and knocked it out. And didn't even realize it. Reagan. Oh my God. But yeah. But that's the episode. And I freaking love the Matsutake. I love the little image at the very end of Dimple like eating with the mushrooms, and it shows him with like the salt. It's Reagan with his bag of salt, and then he grills up the mushrooms for them to eat. It's so freaking cute. With the limes. Absolutely adorable. So yeah. Oh my God. So this first season, I can't believe season 1 is already over. I'm so surprised. It's gone by so quickly, but I've been in love with this season and everything about it. And this show has won me over. I'm like a mob fan now. I'm so excited for season 2 and season 3. It's so good. It's just the perfect blend of action and comedy and drama, and it's just one has outdid themselves. I freaking love it. So yeah, I'm really excited for what season 2 will bring. I'm gonna check because I don't know if there's like a mini series or outtakes or OVAs with this series. I'm gonna look up and see if there's any OVAs and stuff that you watch in between season 1 and season 2. I'm gonna check that out. If that's the case, we'll watch that next week. But if it goes straight to season 2, we'll check out that. So I'm really, really excited. But obviously no spoilers for season 2 or season 3. Let me be in the dark on that. But I'm curious to know, what was your guys' thoughts about season 1? I think season 1's amazing. I love this series. It defied every expectation I had each week. Going into season 1, I thought it was going a certain direction, went a total different direction, but in the best way possible. So I think that's freaking cool. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. But y'all, I can't believe we're through season 1, but now on to season 2, and hopefully more show, hopefully more psychics, more shipping, more Reagan, more mob, all the things. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with some more Mob Psycho. Bye.